I'm working with an agency owner currently who, when we started, had 80 open deals in their CRM. 80. And this looked healthy on paper, and he proudly told me that they hadn't lost a deal this year. Well, I asked just one question. How many have next steps scheduled in the CRM? And the answer probably won't surprise you. It was 7. 73 of those deals sitting there with no action attached, not dead, not lost, just completely abandoned. And this is not a robust sales pipeline. This is work that could be in your studio right now, and it's revenue that should be in your bank account. Now, when you think about it, if we made that a little bit easier, and I made it easier for those clients to automatically say yes, how would your agency look 6 months or 12 months from now? Today, I'm going to walk you through my own process of building a sales system that actually converts without depending on you to close every single deal. I built my agency to 2.2 million revenue. That does not happen by chance, and it doesn't happen without a robust sales machine. But for the first couple of years in our business, I had no sales pipeline system at all. Every deal lived in my head, or it lived in the email chain. When I got busy with delivery, follow-up stopped. I missed opportunities, and sometimes, probably more often than I care to admit, clients felt a little bit let down. When follow-up stops, pipeline dries up. When pipeline dries up, we agency owners start to panic, and more often than not, we start saying yes to bad footwork at terrible margins, just, well, to keep the lights on, to keep bills paid, and to keep people in jobs. Without intervention, that cycle will repeat until you build a proper system. Not just a CRM, though that is part of it, a stage definitions, coverage maps, and follow-up cadence that runs whether you're driving the sales pipeline or not. I want to talk about the problem framing. When I think about scaling businesses, I think about it like this. Running a great agency and running one that's ready for sale are parallel journeys. Great revenue, great profit, and tidy business gives you opportunities, whether or not that somebody wants to put their hand up to buy your business today or in the future. But let me give you the buyer's lens on this, because when a buyer sees, when they look at your sales function, tells them almost everything about the risk profile of your agency. A buyer is discounting 3 things in your sales process. The first is founder-led relationships. If every client comes through the founder's network, what happens when the founder walks out that door for the very last time? The relationships probably will leave with them. That is not an asset to the business, it's a risk, and that risk will eventually cost you money. The second is an unpredictable pipeline. If the business can't forecast revenue for 30, 60, or 90 days out with reasonable accuracy, the buyer has to assume the downside. Again, this will be priced accordingly. And thirdly, inconsistent sales cycles. If one deal closes in 2 weeks and another takes 6 or 7 months, and there is absolutely zero pattern to it, the buyer sees the challenge in forecasting long term, and again, this will reduce the value that they would be willing to pay. Now, here is what I want you to understand right this second. You do not need to fix all 3 of these before exit. You need to show that a system exists in your business and that it is improving. And there's no secret sauce here. There's no magic bullet. Your system should always be improving. Your system should always become more effective and more efficient. Whether you're ready to sell or not is irrelevant. You need a system that's trending in the right direction to get a sale. Because, well, any buyer can work with this. What they cannot work with is, I handle all the sales personally, it's all in my head, and it just seems to work out. With all that said, let me walk you through the 4 components of a sales system that works without the founder. First up, we have the maths behind pipeline coverage, and this is where it all starts. Truthfully, I have this conversation with every single agency owner that I work with, and it almost always is the first time that they have done the maths behind their sales pipeline. And so what I want to do right now is just model this out with you. We'll do it together. So what I want you to do is pick a target for the next 30 days. Say your revenue target is 50K in new revenue. Now estimate your close rate. And if you don't know what that is, assume 25% until you start tracking it. The required qualified pipeline is the target divided by the close rate. So in this instance, it would be £50,000 divided by 0.25, and that would give you a required pipeline of 200,000. Now, if you do not have £200,000 in qualified opportunities in your pipeline right this second, the likelihood that you will hit your 50K in the next month is slim. That's not pessimism, that's just maths. And I know some of you will argue that the business will hit that target, but my counter to this is that it's just luck, and it definitely isn't consistent no matter how you feel about it. Next, we need to add the timing. If your average sales cycle is 45 to 60 days, you do not need the coverage today. You needed that 60 days ago. So the question is not how is my pipeline, it's how is my pipeline and how healthy was it 2 months ago. When I installed this at Kaizen, I used to work backwards from our annual target. If we wanted 2.2 million in new revenue, I needed to know what the daily conversation count had to be to fill that pipeline. And I worked all the way back from that 2.2 million to the number of calls that we had to make. We literally worked it back to a granular level so that we could track every key metric to ensure we hit that target. Target per quarter, target per month, target per week, target per day. And then we used this to map out our activity levels. Some months, this meant that we would have to make 100 calls per day. And I'm not even joking about that. In the early years, Marty and I made personally 100 outbound calls every single day for about 2 years. And that is how we built the market awareness of our business from absolutely nothing in a very competitive market. Today, things have obviously changed with the advent of social media, but the learning from this is that the volume of activity that is needed to cement and grow and set the foundations of your business still stands. Whenever anyone asks me how much activity should they be focusing on their sales and marketing, the answer is always more. Getting back to the activity of setting your pipeline coverage, I appreciate that once you've done the calculation for the first time, the panic either hits immediately because the number's not there, or you've built a little bit of confidence because it is. Either way, you now have something to work with instead of guessing. This is a starting point of a best practice sales function, but critically, it's one that most people overlook. Next, we need to talk about the stages of getting a sale, because nobody just comes up, puts your hand up in the air and says, yep, send me an invoice, we're ready to go. There always is work to be done to guide people through the stages of a sales process. Most CRMs have stages like contacted, proposal sent, and negotiation, and I'd argue that those are just labels, not definitions. A proper stage definition says, stage 2 means we have confirmed the client has a pain that they want to solve, we have identified the budget range, and we have spoken to an actual decision maker. If those 3 things have not happened, the deal is not in stage 2. No matter how promising the conversation went, no matter how well you got on with that client, it's not there. This is probably a good point to explain what I think sales actually is. If you break it all down to the simplest understanding, selling is just a fact-finding mission. Because when a client tells you their need, tells you their challenges that they're facing, tells you the opportunities that they are yet to realize, well, we can relate that back to the products and the services that we offer, and then share with them the right service offering to meet their commercial needs. So when you're going through your sales process, I want you to keep that in mind at all times. Every step of the sales pipeline gets the customer one step closer to a sale. So let me give you a simple 5-stage model that works for most agencies. Step number 1, or stage number 1, the new lead. Someone has shown interest in your business, but you've not even qualified them yet. Stage number 2 is that they're qualified. Confirm the pain, the budget range, identified the decision maker, and that's all been confirmed. And stage number 3 is that discovery is complete. You've had a proper conversation, you understand the problem, the context and the timeline, and ultimately the success criteria. Stage number 4 is the proposal has sent. A proposal is in front of the decision maker with a clear next step or date. Now, and stage number 5 is a verbal yes or procurement. They've said yes, you're dealing with contracts, you're onboarding them, and you're getting that final internal sign-off. When I installed proper stage definitions at Kaizen, 2 things happened in our business. Our total pipeline value dropped because half the deals did not qualify when we applied that criteria. And our close rate, well, it just went right up because we were now working with real opportunities instead of fiction. Critically, I found a number of salespeople putting absolutely every single prospect they'd ever spoken to or even thought about into the CRM as a lead. This was artificially inflating the numbers with the people who had never even considered our business. The pipeline shrinking felt uncomfortable. The improved conversion rate, much better. Paying customers, well, that felt better still. One thing that I tell every single client that I work with, if you cannot get a prospect on the phone for a 30-minute qualification call, they are not a real opportunity. What I always suggest is that when an inquiry comes in, you send them a pre-qualification questionnaire as a prerequisite, and this becomes your first gateway to the understanding of what the customer needs. If they don't fill it in, that's a red flag, and you don't have the qualification call at all. If they do fill it in, you give them 30 minutes of your time to ensure you can do a robust fact-finding discovery call, and if a client doesn't commit to that, they weren't a lead at all. Now, When my clients install this two-tier qualification system, the quality of their pipeline will change overnight. You get far less tire kickers, and when you do have conversations with clients, they are incredibly meaningful, far more meaningful, and they're far more helpful to you in your sales process. If you want to see how pipeline predictability and sales system maturity affect your agency's valuation, check out the free agency valuation assessment over on Move at Pace. It'll take you just a few minutes, and the link is in the description below. The third component of a successful sales system lies in the follow-up, and I promise this is where the money is. This is where deals are done, and I say that confidently because the fix in established agencies rarely is just get more leads, it's to stop losing the ones that you have. 3 problems, 3 fixes. Problem number 1 is that there is absolutely no follow-up cadence in the business. The agency owner I mentioned at the start of this video, 80 deals, 7 with a next step, that is not unusual. I had a coaching client once who sent well over 20 quotes in a quarter. Not one had a follow-up scheduled. Dozens of proposals out there in the ether, and then silence. He was waiting for them to come back to them, and I promise that the majority never will. We installed a simple follow-up cadence and a rhythm in his business. Contact at 2 days after the last touch point, day 7, day 14, and day 30. If there was no response at day 30, the deal goes dormant and gets a 90-day check-in. That is not aggressive sales. That is a process, and a process that you can follow. And the number of deals that convert simply just because you followed up when nobody else did is remarkable. Within 60 days, his conversion rate improved significantly. Same leads, just better follow-up. The real trick is making this systematic, not personal. I call this a compounding sales diary. Every single action in your CRM must get a scheduled follow-on action. That means nothing gets missed. And I was ruthless with this in my team. If there was no next step in the CRM, the deal is in your head, not in the pipeline. And if you constantly do this, day after day, month after month, over the next 12 months, the diary will start to fill itself, because every conversation that you have generates the next conversation. The person who consistently manages their sales diary will 100% get more business. Problem number 2, proposals that do not connect price to outcome. If your proposal reads like a menu, logo design X, website design Y, social media Z, you are selling commodities, you are inviting the client to compare you and every line item with a cheaper agency down the road. A proposal should answer one question: what return does this investment produce? In case you don't know, I built a proposal software called Closed. The link is again in the description, and as part of the service I provide to my clients, some of them had early access to this and they shared their access with me so that I could see their quotes that they were sending out and that we could analyze the data for the benefit of all of those people that were in the trial. After millions of pounds of quotes across many different agencies, I was able to understand something that probably won't surprise too many of you watching this. I learned how clients actually read proposals. The first thing they do is they go straight to the price, always. Before they read a single word of the approach, the methodology, or the timeline, price first. So if your proposal is a PDF that gets emailed over, the client reads the price with zero context and then decides whether to read the rest. And when I coach my clients today, I review their proposals to restructure 2 priorities. First is the proposal format. We have to frame it around the client's problem, your mechanism for solving it, and the measurable outcome, and, well, ultimately the investment that's required. Secondly, we start presenting the proposals in person or on a call. When you walk a client through the thinking before they see the number, close rates will go up dramatically. And I have one client where their average deal size went up by 30%, not because we raised any prices, because the proposal made the value visible and gave them the confidence to charge what they were actually worth. And problem number 3 is weak qualification. As I said, a sales call is a fact-finding mission, and this could not be more critical when it comes to creating and writing proposals. These take time, these take effort, and having meetings takes even more time and even more effort. And if you can't get all of the information before writing your proposal, you're doing yourself and your agency a very big disservice. One of the hardest questions any founder will have to ask a prospective client is, what is their budget? The answer is often, I don't have one. Well, the truth is, actually, they do have a budget in mind, they just don't trust you enough to tell you at this time. And yet, we need to know the budget, at least an indicative price point, so that we can match the service offering that we have to the commercial needs of their business. We're not going to maximize their budget to hit that ceiling because we can. We just need to know the guide rails at least to present this at an appropriate price point. Other key areas of fact-finding to strengthen the qualification any quote would be their timeline, the challenges that they face in the market, the opportunities that they are focused on now and will be in the next year, who the competition are and why they see them as competition. And I have gone deep into each of those, trying to understand the value of our project to their business so that I could price my quote accordingly and that it would show value to them. And when we did this, our quote became incredibly strong in comparison to our competitors. And this allowed us to qualify the opportunities much, much better. Component number 4, making it transferable. Okay, so the fourth component of a strong sales system, and the one that matters the most for valuation, is coincidentally the bit most founders resist. If you're the only person who can close the deal, your agency has a single point of failure in the most important function of the business. Here's how you start making it transferable. The standard sales process is the first thing. Every step of the sales pipeline should have this mapped out from start to finish. What does best practice look like from the company's perspective? How are emails written? What does the cadence of messaging actually look like? And what do we need from the client at each stage? All of these will ensure that when you move along the sales pipeline, you have all of the information that you need, that your team needs to maintain the exact same level of service that you would do yourself. Then we need to standardize the discovery process. One script, one set of questions, one qualification framework, write it all down. Train your team on it, then let them run discovery calls while you listen. This is the watch, help, lead, and solo framework from last week applied to sales. Before I sold Kaizen, we had a business development manager named Kevin. In fact, Kevin gifted me this poster that you can see right behind me. Kevin had quite a bit of sales experience, but not an agency warrant. Over 6 months, he shadowed me. He shadowed me on my calls, then he helped me on the calls, then he led the calls with me in the room, and then he ran them solo. By the time Kevin was fully trained, he could dovetail in any conversation with any client at any level. He knew our pitch inside out and could confidently present this to clients without me even being in the room. That was one of the most valuable things I could show a buyer, proof that revenue generation was not dependent on me or one person in our business. Then we need a standard proposal structure, not a template someone fills in blindly, a structured problem statement, proposed approach, success measures, investment timeline, and next steps. If the structure is standard, a senior team member can write about 80% of this proposal without you. In my close proposal software, I rebuilt this exact same structure that now runs every single one of my quotes, and all I need to do is import the transcripts from my client meetings and it fills in the rest. This saves me hours per week and means that I close more deals. And finally, we have the weekly sales pipeline review. Hands up at home if you do this. I know I do, but I know that many of the agency owners that I work with probably don't. It's 15 minutes and every deal that's on the board we need to discuss. What's moved, what's stuck, what action is scheduled next, and if there is no action scheduled, it's, Ian, not in the pipeline. It is on just a wish list. I said that this meeting needs to be weekly, and you do need to do it to start to scale your business. Yes, you absolutely do. And I would say that in my agency, we would have done this daily because that pipeline needs to be lived. It needs to be breathed in your business and it needs to be worked on every single day because that's where the money is in any business. But I was not a designer. I was a salesperson. I was an MD. My goal was to increase revenue and I took that very, very seriously. If you want to scale your business, you have to do so as well. Now, the goal of making the sales process transferable is not to replace the founder in sales overnight. It is to prove that revenue can be generated by a system, not by one person's network and one person's reputation. Once you have proven it works, you can scale it. This makes the company worth so much more. It makes it more robust, more profitable, and infinitely more sellable. Okay, so that's the end of this video, but what I want you to do this week is just 2 things. First, I want you to look at this pipeline right now. Count the number of deals and then count the number of them that have a next step scheduled. Divide the second number by the first and that is your sales pipeline health score. If it's below 80%, your first move is to install the follow-up cadence. And the second thing I want you to do is to calculate your coverage. Take your revenue target for the next month, divide that by the estimated close rate. That is how much qualified sales pipeline you need as well. Do you have it? If not, the problem is not lead generation, it's conversion and follow-up. And if you want a complete picture of how your sales system affects your agency's valuation, our free agency valuation assessment is available on the Move Apace website. It takes just a few minutes, and the link, as I mentioned before, is in the description. And if you want weekly frameworks on building an agency that runs without you, join over 240 agency owners who have joined the Move Apace newsletter. Again, the link is in the description. Next week, we're going to talk about financial reporting, how to install a weekly KPI system that gives you the control that you need and matures your agency instantly. Make sure you're subscribed, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.